Hello and welcome back to the Jackcast, your Swansea City podcast. I'm hosting this week. I'm Steve Carroll. Unfortunately, Matt has let us down. Can you believe he's gone away the week before the season starts? But have no fear, I'm not here just going to be rambling by myself. I am privileged as ever to be joined by Ian Mitchelmore. Afternoon, Mitch. How are you doing?
Afternoon, mate. Yeah, I'll have to ramble with you as well then, pal. How are things with you, Steve? Good to hear from you, pal.
It's all good here. Obviously, it's been a nice break, I think, over the summer, but as ever, all good things come to an end and the Swans will start to, no doubt, dominate weekends for, the next 9 months or so. There's much to discuss, isn't there? Because, it's been a while in general for this podcast, and obviously we haven't had you on for a little while either, but we've had a few new signings in, we've had a few departures, obviously a few out injured. I think it's fair to say the Swans still need to strengthen as well, and a few others could go. And obviously we have a game to discuss at the weekend. So I think we should get straight to it, really. I mean, let's start with the good stuff. I mean, there's been 4 new arrivals at the time we're recording this. We are hopeful for more in the near future, obviously. And, of course, we definitely need more because of, we are a little bit short, aren't we? But let's start with Giancarlo Franco, a midfield player, Mitch. If I'm honest, I think we've probably had 1 or 2 other higher priorities in the summer, but at the same time, we really needed somebody to come into the middle of the park as well. So a welcome addition, I would say, from my point of view.
Yeah, 100%. And I think you look at Joe Allen's not getting any younger, and he's had rotten luck with injuries since he's come back to the club. It leaves you pretty much with Matt Grimes and Jay Fulton, and I think there was a lot of frustration when those two played together that there was maybe not enough attacking threat. Matt Grimes, we know what he's like quality-wise, but he does a lot of work deep as well. So maybe somebody like Franco with a little bit more of a spark in terms of going forward, that can really help the midfield, I think. And especially when you're talking about Allen not being available as much and Abdullahi, obviously, I'm still not sure where they see his best position because he seems to play centre mid, centre back, out wide. He seems to play everywhere. So I'm not sure he's the ideal man to fit there either. So it was definitely a position that needed strengthening. And I'm sure we'll touch on this when we speak about all 4 players that have come in so far, but it looks like quality over quantity so far. Now, obviously, numbers are an issue. It's such a thin squad, a couple more injuries here and there, and it's just not going to last a championship season. And, it's only the 6th of August when we're recording this, so there's still nearly a month of the window to go. So I've got no doubt that more will be brought in. But yeah, I think Franco was just a quality signing in a position that they were just looking to upgrade more than anything, whereas a few others were a bit more, it wasn't just a case of upgrading, it was a case of actually needing a body in there in the first place. So I think he was a good start. As with all 4, I like the business that they've done so far, if I'm honest, Steve.
Yeah, I'm the same as you. I think quality over quantity is a good way of describing it because, you look at it with well over double figures worth of players came into the club last summer. A lot of them are not here now, or they're deemed as surplus to requirements, which is incredibly damning, really, isn't it? I think this approach is better. I mean, we obviously do need more to come in, as we've said, but I would much rather do it this way rather than just bringing in endless numbers of players who don't really fit in, or the wrong type, and we didn't have a clue what our best 11 was, how we should set up, anything like that. It was generally just shambles. But I do think there is far more of an idea now. But at this stage, we are still a bit short. But the second signing to come in was Yeon Ji-sung. Now, I was very impressed with him on Saturday in the friendly. I've got to be honest with you. I think he seemed to have a nice touch about him. He could beat the man. I thought he looked really good. I was quite excited by his performance, and again, really, I think he's expected to play in the number 10 position, but because of a lack of options out wide, he played there on Saturday. But I think he could be a really exciting signing for Swansea, couldn't he?
Yeah, I really agree, and I think some of the things you said there in terms of the traits that he has and what you saw on the weekend against Rio Ave in the final pre-season friendly, it's different to what they've got in the squad. A bit like Ronaldo, where he first came in, it was, okay, this guy's got a bit of pace. He can beat a man. He can get past a player and put a ball in the box, which is going to be perfect for someone like Vipotnik, hopefully, who we'll come on to in a minute. But he looks very different, doesn't he? And you said, I think the fact that he can play out wide as well, when Ginelli's back and Ronaldo, and if they do bring in another wide player as well, you can move him into the 10 without, Jamie Patterson not being here at the moment either. So the fact that he can cover those positions is going to be a massive bonus, I think. So he looks another really smart signing as well. And he's young as well. So again, there's resale value with these players that they brought in. Okay, aside from the goalkeeper Vigouroux, but the other three are all of a good profile where they should be having sell-on clauses. Whereas you look at last summer, it was quantity over quality, and it was, it was a real mishmash of styles and profiles and everything else. So yeah, at least you can see a proper theme and a trend of the profile and everything else that's come in this season, and the business side as well. It looks pretty good as well, I think, this year.
Yeah, I agree. That was a big issue last year. You're looking at players and thinking, well, if we need to sell to balance the books, who can go? And you're instantly thinking with a lot of them that they just weren't at the right age, really. So I think it's better now that we brought in players that are a little bit younger, and you're thinking if we can improve them and then sell them on. I know nobody really wants to look at things that way, because you want to improve players and keep them for yourselves and try and build something, but we do have to be realistic at this level these days. Quite often you do have to sell a player every summer to balance the books, and if we can build up slowly, a bit like what Brentford did, I think that's going to be the best option for Swansea really going forward. So like you say, you've touched on Vigouroux there. So Lawrence Vigouroux has come in obviously from Burnley to be our new number one. Carl Rushworth, a huge loss really. I know we did discuss this, a lot of signings came in. He was obviously the big success story really. So to lose him is disappointing, because I was hopeful that we might have another year out of him, but we have addressed that issue. I mean, on Saturday, he took a few chances in possession, got caught once or twice, did make a couple of good saves. My instinct is, based on that, he might cost us a couple of goals, but I do think he looks a decent addition. But I mean, I would rather Rushworth, but I think we've got to be realistic that that's not going to happen, is it?
Yeah, I really liked Carl Rushworth. I thought he was excellent, and he had a good bond with the fans and stuff as well. And in such a poor season and a frustrating one where the defence was constantly changing in front of him and he didn't have consistent partnerships, I thought he came out of it really well, especially for a young goalkeeper who's still developing on loan. So yeah, that's a shame. But in terms of Vigouroux, I mean, we had a bit of a chat about it the other day after the game, and I've seen the highlights, and yeah, there's going to be some heart and moment mouth, I think, which is always interesting, but that's modern football, isn't it? I think that's what most coaches want these days. Certainly Luke Williams and Russell Martin, sort of similar sort of style in terms of how they wanted to build from the back as well. So, but he looks a really good goalkeeper. He's well experienced, and he's worked with Luke Williams before as well. So again, it just looks a very smart, sensible signing. And when you lose a player of the calibre of a Premier League loanee like Carl Rushworth, that was a key problem. And obviously Andy Fisher now having an injury as well, it's only heightened the problem. So yeah, it looks another good bit business, and yeah, I'd imagine he's going to be the number one for the foreseeable. Yeah,
you would think so, wouldn't you? I don't see, I could see a goalkeeper maybe coming in if Fisher's going to be out for a while, but I get the impression that Vigouroux is going to be the number one this season. So we'll see how that develops. And so the final signing then is one that we haven't seen yet, only arrived last week, was paraded in front of the Jack Army on Saturday at half-time, Zan Vipotnik. Now, I think it's fairly obvious that striker was the most pressing issue, really, to bring in, certainly after a goalkeeper had come in anyway, because only Liam Cullen is at the club at the moment, so we really needed someone there. And again, another young player, really, who best years should lay ahead of him, and obviously the club have taken advantage of a sad situation at Bordeaux, really, but, the cold-hearted businessman has done a good job, really, bringing him in, you have to say.
Yeah, 100%. It's another one that touches on, like I said a minute ago, with, young players who've got resale value. They can be built up into assets and, ideally in the future sell them for bigger sums if they don't help you get to the Premier League. In terms of the profile and everything that he's done, and not profile as a player, but of the trajectory and the career and everything else, it reminds you of like a Joel Pirro, where he was kind of been plucked from nowhere. I certainly hadn't heard of Joel Pirro when he first came in, and I'll never forget the replies to the story when I first wrote about it. It was incredible, and then a year or two later, people are eating their words. But same with Vipotnik. But the difference
wasn't a certain Swans director, was it?
Yeah, let's not go down that road, Steve. Come on. But, with Vipotnik, he's already got a proven record of goal scoring, which, Joel Pirro's record in pro football, and he'd only just started, in fairness, but he didn't have a good record. So they were judging him on talent and what they'd seen. And in the end, it was an amazing find from the club. But Vipotnik's already got a proven track record of scoring. Was it 10 goals in the second tier in France last year? And, 10 caps for his country already at 22. So, played at the Euros as well. So I really, really like that signing, and just hopefully he can just deliver, get the goals, see how quickly he can settle in, because obviously it's going to be tricky, new environment, and I don't know how much of a pre-season he's had, and he's only just joined up with the club a week before the season opener, so he might take a bit of time to get going. But yeah, it just looks a very, very smart, and I specifically use the word business. I think it's really, really clever from the club. So yeah, it seems positive, and it was the one part of the jigsaw that was absolutely crucial. And, I know there's other areas of the squad that need strengthening, but in terms of that had to be done. And it's a good job that they got it done just over a week before the season as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I was getting a bit concerning with the lack of a striker, really, but I'm glad that's been addressed, even though I do wonder if another one might come in later on. I'm sure we'll move on to talk about that. But let's talk about a few of the departures now. And obviously Nathan Wood has reunited with Russell Martin. He's joined the South Coast club in the Premier League. I mean, this undisclosed fee, I mean, we expect that to be around about 3 million, I think, don't we? But I mean, from a Swansea point of view, I think disappointing really that they didn't cash in last summer when there was more money on the table. Because it just seemed a bit silly not to. I mean, sometimes there's a right time to sell. And they've now accepted a bid that's a lot less, haven't they? Because he only had a year left on his contract, really. So that's how I feel about that. I mean, do you agree?
Yeah, it's one of those. They got this one wrong at the end of the day, but we look at previous examples. Joel Pirro, they realised they were in a similar situation. They got a good fee for him. Flynn Downs obviously had a much better contract situation, so they got a good fee for him as well. So there's been good examples, but this one obviously it is what it. I don't think you can be overly critical, because it's easy to say with hindsight that he should have gone last summer, and if they'd have known back then that he wasn't going to sign a new deal, well, you'd like to think that they would have got it done a year ago. But it is what it is. These things they're very tricky situations, and they've lost out on a big chunk of money on a player who at the time was probably the best asset they had, whereas now you're looking who are the key assets that you're going to get money for. And you're looking at maybe the ones that have come in recently, Ronaldo, Eom, Franco, but again, they're sort of, Ronaldo obviously he's had 6 months and he's shown glimpses, but they're not at that level yet. And this is where, the club has to build them up and become sustainable in that way that they have done since the championship years in the last sort of 7-8 years. So yeah, it was a shame. There's a lot to like about Nathan Wood, and he got a bit of flack at times, and I understand it, but I think he was an excellent player who's, he was destined for the Premier League, I always thought, and he's going to get his chance now. And it's going to be an interesting season to see how they get on playing that style in the Premier League as well, under Russell Martin. And, well done to him on a personal note as well, because it's a great achievement to go straight there and to take them up. As much as he had resources, it's, to beat teams like Leeds to getting up as well. It's a great achievement, and it's a good chance for players like Nathan Wood to step up a level and just show that he has benefited from being at Swansea for a couple of years, and he's gone on to the big stage that everyone wants to do, really. So it is still a club where that is possible. But yeah, like I say, it was a bit of a shame that they didn't get the best business deal out of that one.
Yeah, I think they still have to try and take the mentality, though, that they brought a young player in for a nominal fee and they still managed to sell him for a profit at least. So it does really show then, doesn't it, that is the type of business that you should do, rather than bringing in players that you don't think are going to have the resale value. So there is a lesson there, and I hope they take it, really. I mean, Jerry Yates has gone on loan to Derby. I mean, I think he got 8 or 9 goals last year, which isn't a terrible return considering, he didn't play a huge amount, but it just felt as if he didn't really suit Swansea and wasn't a particular crowd favourite. And this probably is a deal that makes sense from my point of view.
Yeah, it does. I've got sympathy for Jerry Yates because I liked him at Blackpool. He sort of fitted the style. Derby will be interesting to see how he gets on there. He got a lovely assist for them last week, I think it was, as well. And, maybe coming up from League One, he'll get a bit more of a prominent role with them. So, yeah, it just felt like he was the wrong player for what the club needed. And obviously it was under Michael Duff back then, so it was very different. And he just doesn't suit the current style in the same way that we saw Pedersen leaving, Chuon leaving, Kurevic leaving, not playing and then now leaving. It just shows you how bad last summer was in so many ways. It was some really bad business done by the club, and it's going to set them back a couple of years because these things always have a long knock-on effect. And I've got sympathy for Luke Williams for it because it makes his job so much harder than it would have been. But, it does look like that they are going back to what you would like in terms of the profile of players that have come in. So at least they're correcting those mistakes. But again, it's not easy to correct those mistakes. There's still a lot more work to be done, and it's going to take a lot of time. I think at least maybe a January and another summer window for Luke Williams to really be sort of more satisfied with his squad, I think.
Well, this is the thing, isn't it? I mean, when you bring in players on longer contracts and then the management change and they're deemed surplus to requirements, there's no guarantee that other people are going to take them, is there? So it becomes a big problem. And this is why I'll always be an advocate for you appoint managers with similar styles, so they like players with similar attributes, and you don't then tend to need these big clear outs or anything. So I'm hoping that they learn that lesson, really. But you touched on Kukurevic then. I mean, I think it made sense for him to go as well, didn't it, really? I mean, it's a bit of a funny one because a lot of the fan base feel a bit frustrated that he never had much of a chance, but 3 managers essentially didn't pick him, and you just think, well, it's best for him just to move on, really, I think. Yeah,
I think you've just hit the nail on the head there. I mean, he was brought in by Michael Duff, and he did have an injury at one point, didn't he? And then I remember him scoring that header at Millwall, and you kind of think, okay, the club had just sort of started picking up, and then he's got his first goal. Is this going to be a turning point? And then, the football was awful. The fans were low on confidence. The results were bad, and then Michael Duff leaves, and none of that will help Kurevic. But then at the end of the day, if he's still not able to impress under Alan Sheehan and then under Luke Williams on the training ground, there's obviously just something that they're just not thinking he's either not good enough or just doesn't suit them. So, yeah, it made sense. Hibs is a club he knows well because he's been there before. So, yeah, if they can just try and get him up there, play well, get some goals and maybe do a deal further down the line next summer or something like that and try and recoup your losses. That's the situation they're in from last summer. That's the situation they find themselves in, and they've only got themselves to blame. But, as we have said, at least they are trying to sort of streamline things back to how they want to be now with Luke Williams spearheading that. But yeah, I'm going to say it again. I've got sympathy for him because it can't be easy. It really can't.
No, I agree with you. I mean, you're sort of clearing up somebody else's mess, really, aren't you? And it's not easy to do that in one go. And, I think other players may well still go, which we'll touch on shortly. But, let's talk a little bit about Jamie Patterson, because obviously a bit of a strange one. He was offered a contract. Pretty much he's turned it down. And he seems to have just been training on his own, really. So effectively he's left, doesn't he? But it's sort of a bit strange because no one's really said anything, and he's not here, and we're gearing up for a new season. But it's ended in a strange way, really, isn't it? And his whole time with the club has been a bit strange in some ways, because it started really well, then he went off the boil for a long time, then last season was pretty good, and now this has happened, really. But I guess he's edging his bets and trying to look elsewhere. But from my point of view, it seems a bit silly that he's now going to be doing nothing as the season starts, and obviously he could have been here, couldn't he?
Yeah, exactly. It certainly seems like that he was looking to see what was out there, and could he get maybe a more long-term deal? Is he 32 now, something like that? So realistically, has he got one more contract left, maybe? So I think if he was just getting 1-year deals, it might not have been as attractive, but maybe that's just the state that the Championship's in. Realistically, who's going to give him the security or the wage or everything that he might be asking for? I don't know the full scenario, so obviously I'm not going to speculate in terms of what he's asked for or what maybe he wants, but it certainly seems that way, and it's just a shame because I actually think he was one of their better players last season, or certainly one of the better outfield players last season, in what was a poor season for the club on the whole. Under Russell Martin, he had some spells where he was brilliant, but then obviously the contract situations where he didn't play, and then the goals dried up, and he was sort of in and out of the team. And yeah, I think you summed it up there. It kind of sums up his time at the club, which is a real shame because in a lot of ways he was a fan's favourite because he was a good character. We saw him on social media and the way he interacted with fans, and the Derby goal and all those celebrations and things like that as well. So fans have really good memories of him, which it kind of just makes it a little bit of a shame how it's ended, sort of almost without it actually ending it, if you get what I mean.
Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? And I feel he should have decided to take that contract, really, from my point of view, because he was never going to get a 2-year deal based on what happened last time he had a 2-year deal. And I just think that, he seemed happy here. The crowd did like him when he was doing well. And, you can't expect to get a 2-year contract from many places now when you get towards your mid-30s, really. So I think he should have taken that 1 year. And even if he could have asked the club maybe for a year plus, if your mid-30s starts, it would. But the problem is now, because of what's happened, the defensive situation mainly, I'm thinking about, right, how's the sound now? Is it all right? Or
Yeah, we're all good.
I disappear with?
I didn't hear the last sort of 60 seconds of what you said.
Right, okay. Just about Patterson, obviously, that was, wasn't it?
Yeah. I mean, once you finish that, that's all right. You can just jump onto a new one anyway.
Yeah, sure. I'll do a little bit now about Patterson then, so I'll count it in. But
Real.
Okay, I'm trying to think where I was at now. Yeah, I think Patterson it's just a little bit frustrating, really, in terms of he was a crowd favourite here, and I think he should really have taken that deal. But look, it's up to him at the end of the day. We wish him well. He has given us some good memories, particularly in the derby games and stuff like that. But look, it is what it is at the end of the day. But we've covered really everyone that's gone. We discussed previously some of the players that were released, so we don't really need to go into them again. But do you think anybody else could go? I mean, I'm looking at the defensive situation in terms of Christian Pedersen and Nathan Joa on, or however you say it. I don't think I'll ever know how to say it fully. But I mean, do you think those two, for example, could go? Because it doesn't really feel as if they're in the first team picture, does it?
I mean, they've been involved in pre-season, having come back, and I think the centre-back situation needs addressing. I thought they'd have had someone in by now, and we've spoken previously. I thought they would have had one done by now, but it seems like that one fell through, and maybe they're kind of just seeing what they can get done, because a bit like the Kurevic situation, you kind of don't want him. I remember when the Hibs interest first got spoken about, and we'd speaking to people and they were saying, it looks likely, but things need to fall into place first. And obviously with Vopotnik coming in, they did, whereas it hasn't happened with the centre-back situation for whatever reason. So yeah, it might be a case of that might have to happen a little bit later in the window if he is to go out on loan or to be sold. But I don't think they'd be wanting to not bring anyone in and rely on him as a backup, because it's fairly clear the fact that he was allowed out in January. Christian Pedersen, he's probably not the type of player that Luke Williams would favour. So I think in an ideal world, they would certainly bring someone in and try and maybe get him off the books or send him out on loan again. But it might just be one of those that happens further down the line, similar to Chuon as well, I think. On the left, obviously Josh Chimon's come in and I thought he was excellent in the second half of the season. He's really made that position his own. And then you've got Kyle Norton and Josh Key, who, they're not natural left backs, but they can play there as well. So yeah, it looks fairly ominous for those two. And again, it comes down to what was a pretty underwhelming window, shall we say, last year.
Yeah, it does. I mean, we've discussed there the centre back. I mean, that now is one of the key positions, isn't it? Because if Cabango or Darling get injured, then either Philip Lisser will have to come in or Kyle Norton will. And you're thinking, well, we really do need to bring somebody in that position, don't we? It's one of the big priorities now. Yeah,
100%. And that was probably the disappointment. I thought they would have got one over the line maybe last week or the week before, but they must have moved on to other targets and seeing what's out there. So it's looking like Cabango and Darling are going to be the first choice end of, because almost by default there's nobody else there. So especially with losing Nathan Wood to Southampton as well. So that's probably the last one now where you really sort of fear that needs sorting. Once they've got that, the rest is probably just a bit more quality and a bit more depth. But yeah, beyond Cabango and Darling, it's very thin. I know you've got Philip Lisser. They really like him in the academy, and he's sort of stepped up with first team training and stuff as well. But, is he quite ready, and can you rely on him? It'd be a little bit harsh to throw him in at the deep end. So yeah, still work to be done on that one, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the other area I'm looking at is the left wing especially, but I mean, wide players in general. I mean, you look at the other day where Eon played on the left and Azim Abdullahi played on the right. I mean, that's not ideal. That's not what Swansea particularly want to do as far as I'm concerned. I think they want to play Eon behind the striker. I think they probably want to play Ronaldo on the right and then somebody else on the left. So I'm thinking two wide players need to come in really, plus the striker as well. So there is a bit to do. And I feel like a wide player especially probably needs to come in this week ideally.
Yeah, in an ideal scenario, definitely. But yeah, I think the key would be two forwards, probably 1-9 and a winger. Certainly a centre-back, so there's three straight away. And then maybe you're looking at cover for a full-back or the left. What we looking, maybe 4 more in, maybe 5, depending on how they use the loan market. But certainly I think 3 is an absolute must. Probably 4. Yeah, it's probably going to be 4 or 5 more, ideally, isn't it? I think. And it shows, is it 13 or 14 have left altogether and 4 come in? So, and then you chuck in the injuries as well. So, yeah, there's still a lot to be done. But the encouraging thing is at least that they have been patient and the ones they've got in look to have been good business and fit the profile and suit what the club needs. So at least that is encouraging.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's just, we always want more, but I think clubs do also have to be realistic on occasions that it's very hard to get all of your business done before a ball is kicked, isn't it? Because of the way that the transfer window works. So I think we probably do have to be a little bit realistic that it will take a bit of time to get everybody in, but certainly feel like could do with 1 or 2 more now, but before the first game at Middlesbrough. But whether that happens or not remains to be seen. Hopefully, by the time you're listening to this, we'll have at least another one in, but we will see. I mean, we touched there a little bit about injuries as well, and there's a few that weren't involved in the pre-season game on Saturday. I mean, Ronaldo was one. He's not thought to be too far off, is he? But I mean, Josh Ginnelly and Joe Allen doesn't seem like they're going to be back anytime soon, does it?
No, it's a real shame. We touched on Joe Allen earlier, but I think that was part of the concern looking at Franco. Joe Allen, when he was fit last season, he was outstanding at times, and the same under Russell Martin when he first came back. So his experience, his professionalism, everything about him, he's absolutely perfect, but you just can't get him on the pitch enough, and it's such a travesty. We've seen it with the likes of Ramsey for the national side and things as well, and it is just such a shame, these brilliant servants to Welsh football, but that's just where they're at. So I can understand where, there's deep concerns. You look at Andy Fisher's injury sounds pretty serious, so that, you might need another backup goalkeeper there. And then Josh Ginnelly obviously had a horrible injury last season, right at the beginning of his Swansea career, which was just awful luck. And yeah, it sounds like he had a bit of a setback some time ago, and it's just sort of delayed him coming back. So again, realistically, even when he is fit, is he going to be match fit? So we're probably not going to see him for a while either. And then, it's just a shame. And then this comes back to where we're saying if the squad at the moment that's probably going to start on Saturday, the 11 rather than the squad, 1 or 2 issues there, and it just looks so threadbare. And it does go back to playing maybe Abdullahi out of position, playing Eom somewhere different that you might not want to play him, and it's just not ideal. And it just means you're set up for another struggle of a season, and that'd be a real shame because I felt like they've had some really good seasons in the past few years that they were building, and then it just feels like it was really halted last year, and they're sort of starting again from scratch almost. So fingers crossed that Ginnelly and Allen can have some sort of impact when they do come back, and that they can stay fit as well. Certainly Ginnelly, because he is much, much younger. He's got more of his career to come, and there's a lot to like about him as well. So, but yeah, it doesn't sound good to put it in a short way.
No, it doesn't, does it? I mean, like you said, you touched on the 11 for Saturday, and I mean, the likelihood is really that it'll be probably the same team that played Rio Ave on Saturday, which would be Vigouroux in goal, back 4 of Key, Darlin, Cabango and Timon. Then you'd have Franco, Grimes and Fulton in the middle. Azim out wide along with Eom and Cullen up front. I mean, but I think the other way of looking at it is the bench, obviously, you'd have Ollie Cooper on there. And I suppose you'd have the two defenders we've just talked about that are not really in our plans. And then you're down to Vipotnik and a few youngsters. It does look quite weak, really, doesn't it? I mean, so that just shows you the urgency that they need to try and bring somebody in, doesn't it?
Yeah, 100%. And just looking at the bench, you named some of the names there. The bench from Saturday, the Rio Ave friendly, how many first team appearances are on that bench? And, there's barely any. I mean, Lissa played, didn't he? Christian Pedersen and Chuohn. I mean, Chuohn's not even played. So it's, like you say, Ollie Cooper, that's it. Josh Thomas, he's had a loan spell away. So is he going to be sort of kept as a third option for behind Vipotnik and Cullen as well? So it's very, very thin. And I'm sure Luke Williams will be doing everything he can to try and bolster that depth. And then when the likes of Janelli and Allen do come back again, it will look healthier. Hopefully Ronaldo, it doesn't sound serious. And I think Luke Williams was, fairly optimistic in terms of his situation. So again, that one doesn't sound too bad. But yeah, it feels like we've been saying it for a while now, doesn't it? It's just thin and it's a bit concerning, but we've got to try and have faith in the powers that be that they'll get things done within the timeframes that they've got left. But we're on about 4 weeks left of the window. So yeah, time's running out, mate.
Yeah, it is. And obviously the other thing is players run out because others, they obviously go to certain places and then you're left with lack of options of who to bring in as well. So yeah, I certainly hope they're going to start moving quickly. I mean, the opposition obviously on Saturday is Middlesbrough, side that finished in the top half last season. I mean, this is quite a tough start, I think. I mean, I'm looking at them as a side that improved really as last season went on. I think their big issue was probably from the year before where they did finish in the top six, as they lost a couple of goal scorers in Cameron Archer and Chuka Akpom. But they do have a player that started to score in the second half of last season in Emmanuel Latilath, I think. But I think that Middlesbrough could be a team that will be targeting top six, and I think they're a realistic shout for it as well. So this is not going to be an easy game at all to start the season, is it?
Yeah, and 12:30 on a Saturday, fantastic. Oh, how good is that scheduling for the away fans? But yeah, joking aside, it's a really tricky start. I think that, they'll be favourites at home, I would have thought. And I really like Michael Carrick in a lot of different ways. He seems a brilliant person and, he's obviously a fantastic player as well. But having watched his Middlesbrough team, I like the way they play. I like the way they recruit. They seem to have got a good, is it still Steve Gibson there? Is he still there?
Yeah, he's still there.
Still going, isn't he? Yeah. So I like the way that they operate as a club as well. So it just seems very stable, and they're almost like a little bit of a sleeping giant in that kind of the northeast as well. Obviously, sort of overshadowed at the moment by maybe the other two at times, but in Newcastle and Sunderland. But there's just a lot to like about them. They've got good talent in the squad, a good way of playing, really tough to play against, and it's a really tricky start. And I think if you ask most Swansea fans, and I don't know if you're the same, but I would say take a draw, come home, happy days, and that's a solid start to the season, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I think so. I think this is a game to try and get out of the way. I think it would be that, a bit like that, even if you felt that the squad was in a better situation. But I think you put that with it as well. And I think definitely most Swans fans would take a point. I mean, the scheduling is pretty horrific, isn't it? I mean, I think the buses are going at about 4 or 5 in the morning, and you do just think that in general, Sky are trying to stop people from going. And that's not really a good thing. But I do think there'll be quite a few people as well who are on a flight to Newcastle on Friday afternoon, like myself. So I think a lot of people that are going might be looking at it from that point of view instead, which is probably the sensible way of travelling as to up and back on the bus. But how do you see the game going? I mean, from my point of view, I do think it'll be a home win, unfortunately. I think the Swans can give them a game, but I think my prediction is a 2-1 loss, unfortunately. But what do you think, Mitch?
Yeah, it's so difficult to say. I mean, I thought there was a lot of encouraging signs from the Swans on Saturday, and to get 3 goals as well was nice. So I think the key is, can they create chances for, is it going to be Cullen or Vipotnik, or if Vipotnik starts on the bench and he comes on and gets half an hour, 20 minutes, can they come on and change things? Who else is on that bench that's going to change things? If they go a goal down, you fear for them, who's going to be that spark that changes something around? Because like we were saying, look at the names on the bench on Saturday. So that's my deep concern. Whereas if they can just be solid, be compact, even just keep it 0-0 for a good chunk of time and, just take one of those set pieces, Harry Darling, Ben Cabango, we saw him score one in pre-season out in Austria, I think it was when he scored. Or just, an impact from somebody like maybe Ollie Cooper or Vipotnik off the bench, but it's a big ask for that. So I just think, just be solid, try and keep the ball well and no silly mistakes from, playing out the back or anything like that and give yourselves a good chance. I think that'll be the platform, but yeah, I think a draw would be a really good result, if I'm honest.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's very much a fixture to try and get out of the way. And I mean, if I look a little bit ahead, I mean, the Gillingham League Cup game hopefully will give the club a chance to maybe give some of the youngsters, a bit like Lissa, an opportunity, maybe minutes them for players that are coming back as well. I mean, I don't know what Ronaldo will do Saturday, but if he is involved, then maybe an hour against Gillingham could be good. Same for Potnick as we look to build up really. And then, there's a home game with Preston, obviously. And then there's a home game with a certain club up the road. So there'll be 3 home games there in a row, a chance for, hopefully a better start. And I mean, it's difficult really to look at the fixtures without seeing that Cardiff game looming large with it being so early in the season. I don't like it, if I'm honest with you, but again, it does really feel as if it's, pretty much sure already, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. It was the first thing everyone looked for anyway, but this time it was even more, third league game of the season and the fourth in total. So it really is important that the Swans get up and running, even if they don't get a result at Middlesbrough and, maybe even Preston, but they've got to be performing and they've got to show signs of not being slow starters like we saw at times, last season was a terrible start. And, even under Russell Martin where they had brilliant spells, it was a sort of a slow start in terms of results, but some of the performances were good. So yeah, you've got to see something before that Cardiff game, because let's be honest, there's always a spotlight on that, understandably so, but even more so now because it's right round the corner. It's only just over 2 weeks away, isn't it? So yeah, I think get a good performance, just look solid as best you can at Middlesbrough, 3 home games, and then like you say, that Gillingham game hopefully will be a chance to give some of the players match fitness and maybe bring one or two of the youngsters in as well, and a bit more competition for places as well. Then you've got 2 back-to-back home league games to really kind of put a statement down and say, okay, this is what we're going to do this season. We're going to try and take it to these teams who, they are beatable. They're not the Leeds or the ex-Premier League clubs or the division. So, if you're going to do anything, 2 home games against Preston, then Cardiff, you're going to be looking to do something, aren't you?
Yeah, I think definitely. And I mean, Preston's a side we often do well against at home. So I think that's a decent one to start with. I mean, look, I don't want to say too much about Cardiff, but in general, obviously it's a game that we're usually up for. So, you can never guarantee how the result will go, but, you'd like to think we'd have, a decent chance of doing well in that game. But, yeah, it does feel incredibly quick. I know quite a few people are actually on holiday for that game and can't really believe it's been scheduled so early. But, yeah, I think a lot of people are probably thinking that they can't get out of, certain commitments. So, yeah, it'll be interesting that one. There'll be a lot of people watching, frustrated abroad, I think, as opposed to, at the ground. But before we finish, we will touch on Wales briefly. I mean, there's been a change. Some calling for an incredibly long time that Rob Page should go, and obviously now there has been a replacement appointed in Craig Bellamy. I mean, from my point of view, a slight risk because it's a new first-time manager, but it's a calculated risk. I mean, it's Craig Bellamy has been working as a coach, obviously with Vincent Kompany, first at Anderlecht and now at Burnley, and I think this could be a decent move. What I will always say for Bellamy is that he will not accept the slack in standards, and I think it almost feels as if the Wales camp was a little bit too comfortable, and the results have faded, and there's been a lot of frustration with the fans, and it almost felt as if the players, the management, the board, maybe not quite on the same page, but hopefully that will change now with Bellamy. What do you think of the appointment, Mitch?
Yeah, I mean, you summed it up in terms of Craig Bellamy himself and personality. He will not leave a stone unturned. And I remember the interview that he was doing the rounds. Do you remember when he was on Sky about 5 or 6 years ago when he missed out on the job to Ryan Giggs, and he spoke about these people need to be on the ground. Like, why are they all over the UK and England and here, there and everywhere? And it's a full-time job. He needs to be at the Vale. He needs to be at FAW headquarters. He needs to be out and about in South Wales, but obviously the whole of Wales as well. So, and he's already done that. And I think that's a really, really good start. Make everyone together, because that's when we did really well, sort of building up to 2016. And the way he references doing things for Gary Speed, and the fact that he said he spoke to Gary Speed's mum before taking the job. And yeah, it feels like this job means absolutely everything to him. So from all of that perspective, I think he's going to be perfect, because he will do absolutely everything he can to get it to succeed. Again, obviously, like any appointment, there are some risks. He's not had that experience, but maybe it's the right time for him to step away after being with Vince Company for a good chunk of time at a brilliant club that did well under them as well. So I'm really pleased, and I hope it goes well for him, because he seems he's a brilliant character. I've loved the passion that he's got for the country and for the football team. And we're a similar age. We both grew up watching him, and I adored watching him for Wales. I thought he was absolutely a brilliant player to watch, and the way he played for his country as well. So that's going to feed off onto some of these players now as well. So yeah, everything crossed, and we're exactly a month away till that first Nations League game. So it's soon come round, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the thing. I think by that time we might need that little break from the Swans. It's always an intense start to the season, and obviously the deadline day will come, I think, just after the game at West Brom, and then we'll be into the international break. But it all just comes thick and fast, doesn't it, as it always does. But thanks to everyone for joining us. Not the longest one this week, because we've just gone through everything quite quickly, really, and obviously we haven't had any games really to discuss. But I'm sure in the weeks to come now there'll be a little bit longer, as there's a little bit more for us to get our teeth into. But Mitch, thanks a lot for joining us as ever. It's always a pleasure to have you on.
Thanks for having me, Steve. Always a pleasure. Cheers, mate.
Yeah, that's great. But thanks to everyone for listening. So here we go again then, another season underway. All the best to everybody making the long trip, particularly on the day up to Middlesbrough. And everyone that's doing the usual of what I do and staying in Newcastle, hope you all enjoy as well. It'd be good to catch you all for a pint on Friday or Saturday night. But thanks as ever for listening. We will be back more often now that the real business is underway. I don't know what we'll do next week, because obviously we've got that League Cup tie with Gillingham on Tuesday. But we'll try and fit one in, and if not, then the week after, I'm sure we'll find some time with us with a South Wales derby to preview. So thanks a lot for joining us. All the best, and we'll catch you soon. Bye for now.